I've had several of you guys email me over the last couple of weeks asking me what my thoughts were on the issue of college football players opting out of these bowl games. With the injury to Ole Miss quarterback Matt Corral in the Sugar Bowl and the controversy surrounding comments Kirk Herbstreit made over the weekend, I figured we could go ahead and get into this. If you have been following me here on the channel for a while, you already know how I feel about bowl games and college football in general. College football is steeped in tradition, but tradition is not always a good thing. Just because something has been a tradition for decades, it doesn't mean it hasn't become outdated. Groundhog Day was a big tradition hundreds of years ago. We don't really observe it now because we have weather technology. Now, I know that's not a great comparison, but tradition in college football, it actually holds the game back from progressing. College football is the only sport where a tournament isn't held to crown a champion. You have March Madness in the NIT in basketball, World Series in baseball, playoffs in professional sports. There is never an argument as to who the true champion is. Now, sure, people will complain about bubble teams not making the tournament in March Madness, but at the end of the tournament, there is no doubt who won, who is the champion. It's not like that in college football. Most years, there is always a team left out of the 14 playoff that people feel should have been included. Now, it's impossible to know if the team left out had a chance to win the championship because the talent disparity in college football is so big, so wide. Just look at Cincinnati and Alabama last weekend. Cincinnati had been rolling their opponents all season. They finally face a tough team, a team with God knows how many NFL caliber players, and it's not even close. The system in college football needs work. But because there is so much tradition tied into conference rivalries, the system's not going to change anytime soon. There's too much money involved. Now, another tradition in college football is the endless supply of bowl games in December. Bowl games actually used to mean something. Even the lower tiered bowls. I remember growing up, if your team made the Gator Bowl or the Independence Bowl, the Liberty Bowl, it was a big deal. If you made the Rose Bowl, the Orange Bowl, one of the big four, it was a great season. You fast forward to today, bowl games have become meaningless. And I'm not just talking about the Jimmy Kimmel Bowl, which is a complete joke. Even though the college football playoff is a hell of a lot better than the BCS system, what it has done, it has devalued the Big Four bowl games. Teams like Ohio State, for example. Ohio State begins the season with championship aspirations. Playing a team like Utah in the Rose Bowl, it's nothing but a consolation prize. It doesn't mean anything. We are 2021 Rose Bowl champions. Who cares? Big deal. No one is going to remember next year. What has happened? Players know that these bowl games are meaningless. We are seeing more and more players who are NFL prospects choosing to just sit out these bowl games, not participate. And it's causing a lot of controversy in the college football world. Old school traditionalists like Kirk Herbstreit, they don't like it. He didn't break down in tears when he talked about this like he did last fall when he was talking about being a loyal SJW, but Kirk Herbstreit did generalize an entire generation of football players. Listen to what he and Desmond Howard said about it.
Money, the amount of money, like what's the difference as a player in saying these games are meaningless when, Des, we played in quote unquote meaningless games. I mean, I know you guys were here a lot, but I just don't understand. If you don't make it to the playoff, how is it meaningless to play football and compete? Isn't that what we do as football players? We compete. So I don't know if I don't know if changing and expanding it is going to change anything. I really don't. I think this era of player just doesn't love football.
That's what I was about to say. We're dealing with a total different mentality when we're dealing with these student athletes nowadays, especially the football players. I mean, their whole mentality right now is about the championship, the playoff. We got to get into the CFB or the CFP. And because of that, they don't value the bowl games. Now, when we were coming up, Herbstreit and myself, like to go to a bowl game was a huge reward for a fantastic season.
At the beginning of every season, what is the goal of every team? What is the end goal? It's to win a championship. So, of course, if a team fails to meet that goal, they're not going to be excited about a consolation prize bowl game. Desmond Howard said something I found interesting, and it relates to the point I just made a second ago. He said when he was playing in the late 90s, it was a big deal to make a bowl game. It meant you had a successful season, a winning season. But that is no longer the case. 88 teams qualify for bowls. In the last 25 years, the number of bowl games has doubled. And we would have more meaningless bowls had the NCAA not implemented a 3-year moratorium from 2016 to 2019. Now, the NCAA is generally useless, but at least they acknowledged the bowl games were getting out of hand. It's watered down. You have 6, 7-win teams qualifying for the postseason. It just doesn't mean anything anymore, and these kids know it. So if you're an NFL prospect at Arkansas, I don't care if you're expected to go in the second, third, fourth, fifth round. It doesn't matter. If you're an NFL prospect at Arkansas and you have the choice to play in the meaningless Outback Bowl against Penn State, a game no one will remember in 2 weeks, or begin preparing for the NFL draft, what are you going to choose? It's not a hard decision to make. Why should these kids be held to a higher standard when the NCAA, the schools, the networks aren't held to a higher standard? They are all making billions of dollars every year off of these athletes, and the kids are making nothing. Here they have an opportunity to make life-changing money, and guys like Kirk Herbstreit, they want them to pass it up for the love of the game. That is bullshit. You know who's playing for the love of the game? The 5th-year senior who has no chance at making the NFL. He's playing for the love of the game, but the 3rd-year junior projected to go in the first round, it is no longer about love of the game. It's business. It's about making the league, making life-changing money. It's also about choices. This all boils down to the freedom to make a choice with regards to your own future, your own life. About 10 years ago, Jadeveon Clowney was going to sit his junior season the entire year. He was going to skip the entire season and prepare for the NFL draft. There was so much media pressure, so much scrutiny, that he ended up playing some of that season. Now, he would play in key games and sit meaningless games against cupcake programs. He wanted to sit South Carolina's bowl game that year, but he was pressured to play in that as well. He owes South Carolina. He owes it to his teammates. These players don't owe these universities shit. Like I said, they make millions of dollars off these kids. But when it's time for the player to put himself first, when it's time for the player to get paid, the school wants to shame him for it. This is not a generational thing. This is not some shift in mentality. Players did not make bowl games meaningless. The NCAA, the television networks did that. Kirk Herbstreit claims to love the game of college football, and I'm sure he does. But let me ask you this. If ESPN ceased to pay him millions of dollars every year, you think Kirk Herbstreit is traveling the country doing College Game Day, calling the primetime game on ABC every week? Do you think he's doing that for free? Wait a minute now. He supposedly loves the game. If his love of the game is so strong, why doesn't he call games for free? After all, the players are playing for free for the most part anyway. Kirk Herbstreit attempted to roll back his comments. He was blasted on social media for generalizing an entire generation. Here was his response.
Every coach that I talk to in the country, when I'm breaking down a roster, I'm going over there too deep in a production meeting, and one of the things they'll say to me on a guy that, like Nakobe Dean, this guy loves ball.
Right.
And I'll be like, when they first started to say that to me, I was like, yeah.
Yeah, of course.
But now I'm starting to realize, like, no, this guy's a gym rat. Like, he'd be here, even if we didn't ask him to be here, he'd be here. And that's becoming more rare.
Exactly.
And the reason that's becoming more rare is they have so many distractions. They have this, and they have video games.
Like I said, that is not a generational issue. That has always been the case. There have always been 1 or 2 players that work harder than the rest of the team. You know what they used to call them? Team captains, leaders, NFL prospects. I don't blame these players for choosing to sit out these meaningless bowl games. It's not worth the risk. Look at what happened to Marcus Lattimore. Coming out of his freshman year at Arkansas, he was one of the top running backs in the country, SEC Freshman of the Year, first team All-SEC. He tears a ligament in his knee during his sophomore year, out the remainder of the season. Comes back his junior season, tears the ligament again. Brutal injury. It was a brutal injury. Marcus Lattimore had the potential to be a first-round draft pick. Instead, he gets drafted in the 4th round. I think the Niners drafted him. I don't even think he ever played a game in the NFL. He retired 1 year later. It's not worth the risk. Players don't owe it to the program to play in a meaningless bowl game, and they shouldn't be blasted by millionaires like Kirk Herbstreit for making a personal decision about their future. All right, let me know what you guys think. Should players be required to play bowl games? Should they be criticized if they opt out? Sound off in the comments below. Make sure to like and subscribe. Click the notification bell to receive all notifications from the channel. Best way to contact me is by email at btlkc84@gmail.com, KC_BTL84 on Twitter. I'll see you guys later.